Hi guys, this is Liz Kaneda from Sleeklens. Today I have a tutorial on the Forgotten Postcards Workflow, and we're going to be talking about sepia tones. So originally, way back when photography was a chemical process with film, sepia toning was a chemical process to kind of add these warm brown tones to your black and white photographs. But now that we have digital, we can actually do that in Lightroom. So I'm going to show you how to use this workflow to achieve those sepia tones. So I have a photograph open here, and as I mentioned, sepia tones, the chemical process of toning a photograph used to be done on black and white, but now that we have digital and we have the tools to kind of add the tones to color photographs, we can do that as well. So with this photograph, I'm going to show you how to add a sepia tone to it, but keep the color in it as well. So a lot of the presets that come with this workflow already have that rich brown tone to them. So I'm going to be starting with our vintage matte presets down here, and I'm going to be using the vintage matte autumn, which as you can see has just automatically added that brown sepia tone. And I'm only going to make one other edit to this photograph, and a lot of times when you do tone something, it's adding a brown tone to the kind of highlights and whites. So I'm going to just go in here, and I'm using a brush from the Forgotten Postcards Workflow. I'm going to be using the Brighten brush, and I'm just going to use that to brighten up his eyes, just because I really like eyes, and this is a nice way to kind of fix them after you've applied a darker tone over the photograph. So I'll just turn the exposure up. Alright, so that was it, 2 edits. I just did a preset and a brush, and I already applied the sepia tone to the photograph. So here's the before and after. So it just gives it a kind of vintage feel. And as you can see, the brush really kind of enhanced the catch lights in his eyes, and it actually makes it really nice after effect. Alright, I'm going to have a second photograph here. So for this one, I'm going to be starting with our vintage presets, and I'm going to be using the nostalgic effect ones, and for this photograph I'm going to be using vintage 16. And the next thing I'm going to do is tweak this preset. So this preset is a kind of apply all one-click edit, but you can go into your tab and kind of tweak it a little bit. So I open my basic tab here, and I'm going to turn the exposure up, and I'm turning the contrast up as well for this photograph. And I'm going to be turning my shadows down. So the next thing I'm going to show you is sometimes when you have applied a sepia tone to the photograph, it's already kind of converted your photograph to black and white in a sense with the brown tone. So I'm going to be hitting this black and white tab here, and what that's going to do for me is give me all these color sliders that I can mess with. So what it's doing is it's just changing the color that was originally in the photograph. So if I use the yellow here and slide it all the way up and down, you can see how it's taking the yellows in the photograph and changing them. And you can see on the histogram that it's moving back and forth as well. So for this one, I'm actually turning up the yellows because I want to add a little bit of light to the photograph. But if I were to take the blue and kind of go up and down, as you can see, it's moving a little bit back here, but there's not a lot of blue in the photograph, so it really doesn't make much of an effect. So the next thing I'm going to do is to kind of give this just a little bit more of a vintage effect. I'm going to add a vignette to it, and I'm using the medium black one, but I want to adjust it a little bit because it's a little too strong. So I'm going to go to my effects tab here, and you're looking for something that says highlight priority amount, and we're just going to turn it up a little bit. Alright, so here's the before and after. We've got that nice rich brown sepia tone. And we've also added a lot of light to a kind of underexposed image as well. Alright, so moving on to the third photograph, I'm going to be using my nostalgic effect presets again, which are down here at the bottom. And for this one, we're going to be using vintage 10. Just another preset that has that sepia tone effect. And I'm going to go ahead and apply another preset on top of that. I'm going to be using the Brighten preset in our exposure here, just to add more light to the photograph. But what that's done is, even though it's added a lot more light, it's kind of blown out some of the highlights here. So I'm going to tweak it a little bit by going into the basic tab here and turning the highlights down even more. So what's happening with your photograph here is we have some split toning going on. So I'm going to open up my split toning here and show you how to kind of tweak the preset to kind of match the colors that you're looking for. So with our split toning here, you have the highlights and your shadows, and you can see the highlights is where that brown color is really coming in. So what I want to do here is just change that a little bit by kind of turning the saturation of this highlight down just a little bit, not too much. And I want to just turn the shadow up a little bit, not that much, because it has a little bit of a green shadow here. So I just messed with the split toning a little bit. As I mentioned before, going into the black and white tab here, I'm going to use this to kind of tweak the original colors to add more contrast to this photograph. So I'm going to be messing with the purple and the magenta, because originally their clothing, as you can see, has those magenta and purple tones in it. So I'm going to be turning it down. So as you can see, I've just immediately added darkness to the photograph just by messing with this purple slider here. And I'm turning the magenta down as well, which completely changes the color and tone of her clothing, as you can see. Alright, so that's all I'm doing to that photograph. Here is the before and after. So our tone is slightly different than this one. We have more of a rich brown, and here it's kind of more of a yellow brown, but it still falls in that range of sepia toning. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial on how to create sepia tones, and you'll be able to try it out for yourself.